Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Anne and today I'm going to give you my spoiler-free review of Aurora Rising. I'll just tell you now, I didn't like it. So before we begin, I did want to quickly say that I have a cold right now, so that might be why I sound a little different or look a bit like crap. But I did want to film this video today, so here we are. So, Aurora Rising by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. If you watch BookTube regularly, you will have seen this book around multiple times, I think, because it's been pretty popular and a lot of people have been talking about it. Not everyone has been positive, but it has gotten a lot of buzz. This is the first book in a new sci-fi series called The Aurora Cycle. It came out in May and I was very excited to read it because I adored the Illuminae files, which is the previous collaboration between these two authors, and also a sci-fi series. Based on that, I thought I would love Aurora Rising, and I was hopeful and eager to get back in the sometimes twisted minds of these two authors. However, I didn't like this book. I ended up giving it 2 stars, and I think that might actually have been quite generous, considering the fact that I don't really have positive things to talk about in this video. In fact, I'm not sure why I didn't just DNF this. I had a hard time getting into this story, but I thought that maybe that would just be the beginning and that it would get better and I would get sucked in like I was with the Illuminae files. So I kept reading and I thought everything would be fine. But then I was already halfway through and it hadn't really gotten better, and I thought, well, I might as well finish it now, I've come this far. And granted, it did get a little more interesting towards the ending, but overall this book just didn't do it for me. And that's sad because I really wanted to like it. I was ready for more space chaos and twisted things happening. But where Illuminae hit all the right buttons for me, Aurora Rising basically missed all of them. Let's talk about why in a spoiler-free way. I'm also going to put aside this book because it is big and it's getting heavy. Let's see if I can put it in a place where you can actually see it. That sort of works, I guess. Oh well. So back to the review. Where did Aurora Rising go wrong? I think the problem with this book is that the authors wanted to emulate the success of the Illuminae files. That trilogy was such a big hit. Everybody loved it. Okay, not everybody, but most people loved it. Everybody was raving about it at some point. And I think the authors just went, well, let's try that again. Once again, we've got a group of snarky young people in space, and once again we've got them fighting some big bad evil that's much too big to be fought by them. The odds are stacked against them immensely, and in fact the chance of them surviving is next to nothing. That was basically the premise for the Illuminae files, and it is the premise for the Aurora Cycle as well. I also just realized I haven't really told you what the book is about yet, so let's just do that first. Aurora Rising centers around a squad of misfits, led by Tyler Jones, also known as Golden Boy by some people in the squad. Tyler Jones was the best student all throughout his years at Aurora Academy, and Aurora Academy is basically this military academy for a type of UN organization, but then in space. Tyler was the best at everything, and that meant that at the end of his time at Aurora Academy, during a ceremony called the draft, he would have first pick out of all the other students or cadets or future legionnaires to create his ultimate space squad for the Aurora Legion. But then he ends up missing the draft because he was out in space saving this girl called Aurora O'Malley, another Aurora. And Tyler ends up with the dregs that nobody wants, the misfits, the sociopaths, the people no one gets along with. Apart from his twin sister Scarlet and his best friend Kat, who are loyal to him and want to be in his space squad. Now, Aurora O'Malley ends up being pretty important to the story. She's also the creepy girl on the cover. And Tyler and his squad are dragged into this huge mission while no one really knows what's going on and what they're doing. Slowly they start to unravel more of what is happening, and they find out that basically they might be the only ones who can save the universe while everyone is working against them. Yeah, high stakes. Illuminae had this kind of magic about it that made me fall in love with the characters and made me care deeply about them and about their fates and everything that was happening to them and around them on these spaceships they were on. Aurora Rising didn't have that magic. The stuff that's going on in this book is kind of huge. Like I said, They're very high stakes, but I just didn't really care. And I think this had to do with a few different things, mainly the characters, the plot, and the way the plot unfolds. So, the characters. We've got a squad of 6 different legionnaires of the Aurora Legion, and then there is Aurora herself. So 7 people. There was only one of those characters that I actually liked, and that is Finian, who is the bisexual disabled guy with the horrible sense of humor. Also, while we're at it, his bisexuality is mentioned a few times, but it felt more like ticking a diversity box than actual representation, but I might be wrong about that. I'm not bisexual, so I might not be the one to judge, but it felt a little iffy to me. Anyway, Finian is the gearhead, so he knows about all the tech stuff going on the ship, and I loved him. He was wonderful. To me, he was one of the only good parts of the book. The other members of the squad simply felt like they weren't fleshed out enough, or I thought they were annoying, or both. There's Tyler, who I already talked about, Golden Boy Extraordinaire. He is smart, he is a tactical genius, and he had no personality beyond his brains and good looks. If I have to read about those damn dimples one more time, I swear to God. He was just kind of boring and much too righteous for my tastes. Then there's his twin sister Scarlet, who had so much potential of being such a cool character. I think I could have loved her, but they just didn't do enough with her. She was very charismatic, very smart, and very gorgeous, and that's all there is to her. Also, her snarky comments basically made me cringe most of the time instead of laugh. And she took the whole humor in the face of danger a bit too far. Nobody talks about eyeliner, I think it was, while they're about to die. Then there's their best friend Kat, who just annoyed the hell out of me. Her only personality trait seemed to be that she was angry and jealous because she was in love with Tyler. And that's it. Then there's Zila, or Zyla. I pronounce it as Zila, so I'll keep doing that. She could have been really interesting. She was described as a sociopath scientist, which sounds really cool, but she got hardly any screen time, and I'm not really sure why she was there. I think her story might be developed more in the rest of the series, because there were a few seeds here and there about her backstory, but we never got to know anything more about her. Zila was basically just there, and because she had so little story and screen time, I didn't get the chance to care about her. And then there's Cal, the worst of them all. He seems to be a mix of Rowan from Throne of Glass and Edward Cullen from Twilight. Not something I'm really into. You know, the brooding, tortured, noble guy who's basically just an asshole. I ain't got no time for that. And then lastly there's Aurora herself, who just basically annoyed me most of the time. She had her interesting moments, mostly when she reflected on her past, but most of the time she just caused a lot of problems. She was the catalyst for the entire story, but most of the time she was just useless, basically. So yeah, I didn't like 6 out of the 7 main characters, and that's a little problematic when it is obvious that you're supposed to care about this squad. I just didn't connect, which means I didn't really care about what happened to the characters, which in turn meant some of the suspense was taken out of the story for me. Which brings me to the plot and the way it unfolds. I have a lot of issues with this. A lot of the plot points are extremely cliched. At one point there's a room the squad is trying to get into to steal something, and there's only one way in, which is through a locked door, and there's only one key, and where do you think that key will be? Yep, around the neck of the owner. I could guess multiple of the twists and turns, and I always say that this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes I like it when books are predictable, and sometimes I predict a twist, but it actually makes the anticipation more fun. But in Aurora Rising, it just once again took all of the suspense out of it because of the way they were trying to build up to it. It was pretty clear you were meant to go ooh and ah and no, which is basically what I did while I was reading the Illuminate files. But here it just didn't work for me. My main problem with the plot though is that for the majority of the book, no one knows what's going on. And that's both the readers and the characters. And the characters keep saying or thinking things like, we gotta have faith, or I don't know why, but I know we're meant to be here, or I don't know how, but I know it was somehow connected to me. How? Why? Explain this to me. That's a recipe for eye rolling for me, because that's not how storytelling works. Come on! That's just excusing yourself from thinking of motivations for the characters to act the way they do. And they all put themselves in extremely dangerous situations without knowing what they're doing it for. Why? Why on earth would you happily send yourself to almost certain death to steal something without knowing what it's for or why you're stealing it? It just doesn't make any sense. And then there's the fact that these people are completely inexperienced and they keep pulling off escapes and heists and missions in incredible ways. I like that in Illuminate because somehow it seemed, if not realistic, then at least cool in Illuminate, but here it was just too much for me. Also, this book is littered with Deus Ex Machina moments. I've lost count of how many times these characters were in situations where they all were like, well, we're definitely going to die now, and there seemed no way out, and then, oh yeah, there was suddenly a way out. Something happens that miraculously saves them. And a lot of those times those somethings had to do with Aurora. This was yet another thing that took away the suspense for me, because even though they were in the most awful situations and they seemed completely doomed, you always knew that something was going to happen that would save them, basically. They would get out of it one way or another. And we see this all the time in stories, both books and films, of course. And sometimes it can be fun and sometimes it can be done well. But the frequency with which this was happening in Aurora Rising was just off-putting. I think it took too long before anyone knew what the heck was going on. We, and I mean the reader and the characters, are in the dark about what they are doing and what is happening for over 300 pages. You got to give me at least something to keep things interesting and to keep me invested. Because yes, when we finally do find out more about the issue at hand, it turned out to be pretty interesting. But at that point, like 350 or 400 pages into the book, there was no way that was going to interest me anymore. It was too late for me to become invested in the story. I liked what was going on and I liked the implications that brought with it. And the last part of the book was definitely my favorite part. But am I now suddenly interested in continuing this series? No, probably not. I just don't want to put any more of my time into this after being disappointed and annoyed for 400 plus pages. I'll just read a summary when the next book comes out. So yeah, this turned out to be quite a rant, but I hope it was at least a little bit nuanced and that I managed to explain my problems with this book to you. I think my issue might have been that I might have been comparing Aurora Rising a little too much to The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers in my head. I read that last month and it's also a sci-fi book about a squad on a spaceship. And it's one of my favorite books I've read so far this year. But, okay, here's a metaphor. Where The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet felt like a beautiful painting full of interesting detail, Aurora Rising felt more like a children's drawing, and that might seem a little bit harsh, but that's what it felt like to me. So, enough ranting. I want to know your thoughts. Have you read Aurora Rising? Did you like the book? Please let me know in the comments, but no spoilers please for the people who haven't read the book yet. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more, and thanks so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye!